Good morning, everybody. This is Addison Shonland. It is February the 3rd, 2021, and my guest today is Elmar Conradie, who is CEO of FlySafair in South Africa, more commonly known to retail customers or passengers as FlySafair. Elmar, maybe you can give us an introduction to Safair and FlySafair and the whole brand.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, Addison. So FlySafair is born out of the company Safair. We one company, but Safair has been around for a long time, since 1965. So we are 56 years old this year. When we started the airline, the FlySafair side of the business, we joke to say it took us 50 years to be an overnight success. So the traditional part of our business, we operate, at the moment, we mainly operate some Hercules L100s or the C130s, as most people know them, which is the military version. We operate the civilian version. We still have 4 that we operate. We used to at one stage operate about 11 of them. And then, the history of Safair, we've done everything. We've done leasing, we've done ACMI, we've done pure leasing, dry leasing of aeroplanes. We've done maintenance for some of the local airlines. We've been around the block. So the last part that we've never done before, which we started 6 years ago, was this part of the business of FlySafair, where we actually started selling tickets and flying people around the country.
So, of course, now that you've mentioned the Herc, who cannot ask the question? Are you guys looking at the updated version of the non-military Hercules for any Africa use?
The J model.
Yes,
So the J model hasn't been certified yet for civilian use.
because I saw that
Um,
airplane do a loop at one of the last air shows that we used to have when we used to have air shows, which was absolutely breathtaking to watch.
Fantastic aeroplane, just like its older brother.
Okay, so let's move on to an agenda here. So the situation in South Africa, of course, the country is now famous for a virus version, but there's been pretty much chaos there in terms of travel. You've got the national airline that's collapsed. You've got lockdowns and then opening up and then lockdown again. What's the current situation in the market there?
Okay. Well, I'll touch on the stuff that you mentioned there. The national airline that, like you say, that's not operating had less of an effect on the market, because domestically and actually regionally, to some large extent, they operated through either their low-cost airline Mango or through their partnership with Airlink. So, and both those airlines are still operating domestically. Airlink actually operating more domestically now than what they did before. And they also still fly all the routes that SAA used to fly regionally. So the only thing we really miss, I guess, that SAA used to provide is some of the long-haul flights and maybe of some of the, I can't think of any other routes where, or let me put it this way, there's no route that they used to fly that's not serviced by some other airline now. It's it was either filled by other African carriers, international carriers like Emirates. But there's enough capacity in and out of South Africa on the international routes, and domestically the slack was taken up by all the other airlines. And then yes, we were in a lockdown from the 25th of March, and we weren't allowed to fly until the 15th of June. So there was no domestic travel whatsoever until the 15th of June. Then they opened up just for business travel. Then finally they started leisure travel again on, I think it was the 17th of August. And we've been allowed to operate all the way through, but there's been other restrictions that hampered our business tremendously. They've put curfews in place, which obviously then restrict the times that we can fly. But more importantly, it actually just restricts the reason why people want to go somewhere, because if there's a curfew in Cape Town, for example, you don't want to go to a restaurant and be back in your hotel by 8 p.m. and you can't have a glass of wine because they've restricted the sale of wine. So they've basically taken away the reason for people to go away at this stage and even travel domestically. Even though they can travel domestically, people just don't want to.
It's an amazing situation when you look at the public policy trade-off between jobs, and obviously tourism is a tremendous job creator because it's service industry. There's a limited amount of automation, and the need in South Africa to employ people, and this trade-off against a virus, the pandemic. It's amazing. So it's interesting. So basically, from an airline operation standpoint, the absence of SAA has not impacted the market. It's probably helped you, right?
It would have definitely helped us if the market if we were still trading under normal conditions. We've not seen, because of what's happened with COVID, I don't think any of the airlines actually saw a benefit out of them not operating domestically.
Right. Okay. Now, so if the absence of SAA has not impacted your business, the news that we saw yesterday, I think it was, that you're now allowed to fly to Mauritius. As you mentioned, Airlink is flying all over the Southern African region as far as their airplanes can reach. I remember once speaking to Comair about this, and they were talking about when they had a MAX 8, they could go Joburg to Lagos. And once they're in Lagos, there was nothing to stop them going from Lagos to London. So, ambition is a wonderful thing if you've got the right tools. In your case, you're using the NG, the 800 NG. What are your ambitions in terms of finding gaps in the market that SAA has left open to you beyond the domestic market? Surely, Mauritius obviously is one, but there must be others that you're looking at.
Look, so we've always focused primarily on the domestic market. And like you say, Mauritius that we announced earlier this week will actually be our first international route or regional route. And I think in terms of, if you look at our business model, which is, the low-cost airline model, where we've got high density, we actually want shorter flights. We don't really want these long 4-hour flights to operate. So there's very limited sort of routes that we can operate in the region with our size of aeroplane. But I mean, if the opportunity is there, and like you say, without SAA, if SAA is not operating, we're looking at it on an opportunistic basis. Let me put it that way.
Right.
We're going to try one route first, settle down, see how it goes. Does it work for us? Obviously, again, because of the business model, we prefer the predominantly leisure route and not the business route. Because, our customers aren't, I mean, we do have a lot of business travelers, but that's not our main customer. It's not the predominant customer.
So, I mean, I would imagine places like Vic Falls,
Yeah, so any of the leisure destinations, I mean, out of South Africa. So maybe Windhoek, Vic Falls, Harare, to some extent, Botswana, Mauritius. But like I say, we're going to start with Mauritius. We actually hoped that it would be something easier, maybe a Windhoek as our first one.
Yeah,
because it's a little bit. Yeah,
ETOPS is interesting. It's an interesting baptism of fire.
Exactly. And getting the aeroplanes oceanic, and now we have to dedicate aeroplanes to be oceanic and stuff like that. So it wouldn't have been our first choice, but because it's not open skies, you have to apply for routes, you have to see what's available. Is there frequencies available under the bilaterals? And we're in the unfortunate position where, I mean, you spoke about SAA, they actually still hold a lot of the traffic rights on some of these routes. And those traffic rights haven't been released to the other operators to fly.
That's interesting. They didn't try and hand off some of this to Mango.
So my understanding is that they can't, because it's two different licenses, different.
Okay.
So you'll have to apply.
Right.
Mango will have to apply to fly.
Right, because I would imagine when I spoke to Roger Foster at Airlink, it seemed pretty clear to me when we were speaking that this is an opportunity to close gaps, grab opportunities while you can, so that if and when SAA comes back, it'll be kind of uphill battle for them, and they probably will have lost the momentum. I would imagine that it's similar situation for you.
Except that our primary focus is domestic, and
Right.
SAA basically just flew Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Johannesburg, Durban, and I think they had a flight to East London. So they were already very much out of the domestic market.
Right.
So from that perspective, there isn't really anything for us to go after. On the regional side, there's more opportunity to go after some of the stuff that they flew. But we need to take it slow on the regional stuff because it's a learning experience for us. So we won't be rushing in head first and start flying 10 new regional routes or anything like that.
So the reason I guess I'm focusing on that is when I look at the South African market and the number of airlines flying, there seem to be a lot of seats chasing not so many people.
So under normal conditions, it would be fine. I think we would have had a nice balance between the available seats in the market and the demand in the market, because the seats in the market was actually designed around the current demand. It was nicely matched.
Right.
But because of the current situation with COVID, there's just way too many seats. But I think that's not unique to South Africa or even regionally.
Right.
I think that is across the world. It's a problem. There's just too much capacity and no demand.
Could you share with us what your load factors look like?
The load factors are okay. They sort of, we've managed to maintain more or less what we've always managed to maintain. The issue is that we're only flying about a third of the flights that we used to fly at the moment.
Right.
And the problem has been that it changes so quickly. I mean, when we started in June, I mean, we were then, I think we were on about 20% of what we used to fly. And then we managed to go all the way up to 100% in November. And then December, when the restrictions started coming in with the levels, and also Comair returned to the market then. So everybody had to start cutting flights out. So we're now way back down to about 30% again. And the whole market is down to 30%. So if you look at the passenger numbers per day now, on average, it's about a third of what it used to be. So there's 2/3 too many seats in the market.
Yeah, that's going to do nasty things to pricing.
The pricing is rock bottom. I don't think it's ever been so cheap to. In fact, I was just joking with someone in the corridor that we're paying people to fly with us at the moment.
Yeah, that's kind of similar to what's going on in India, where it's unbelievably cheap. But of course, in India, more people travel by train in one day than travel by plane in a year. And of course, you've got 1.3 billion people. So anyway, now the growing competition has to, as you've mentioned here, is putting a lot of pressure on you guys. So it would seem to me that the successful operator is going to be the one who's racing to get to the lowest cost of production. And as an LCC, that's obviously a prime focus for you. How are you going to do that?
So I think at the moment, again, sorry, I keep on going back to this point, but under normal conditions, the lowest cost of production would be the thing that we're all trying to get down. But because we're flying so little at the moment, our cost of production is ridiculous. It's just, because you still have all the staff, all the aeroplanes. So in some way, the focus is now rather to try and get the fixed cost portion of your cost down. Right. Not necessarily to try and be the cheapest producer of seats in the market, but to have the ability to really cut back to the absolute minimum that you need to fly and cover your costs, which is difficult because that means you need to cut salaries, you need to try and negotiate with lessors and get your leases down, which is harder this time around because it's been going on for a year now.
Right. If you look 5 years ahead, Elmar, what can we expect from FlySafair?
I mean, to be honest with you, at the moment, I'm focusing 5 weeks ahead.
Right.
5 years seems like a very long time. Um, it's not going to sound very ambitious, but I think any airline that can manage to fly during the pandemic and still be around in 5 years' time, then they've already ticked off the first objective.
Fair point.
Uh, and I think our second objective will definitely be to try and grow our market share. We managed to get our market share up to, at some period last year, it was up to 40%. I would like that to stabilize at around 35% of the market domestically. And hopefully we would be able to add a few more regional routes over the next 5 years and grow that side of the business.
Last thought that crosses my mind, obviously as an NG operator, and I would imagine your NGs are not new or young. Are you considering MAX? Because MAX is back and you can get deals on MAX today that are lovely. And obviously they come with a nice maintenance holiday, and obviously for South African situation, a low fuel burn, substantially lower fuel burn, 16% or something. Is that on your radar?
So we actually looked at it a little while ago, and the MAX was very attractive. And I mean, like you say, at the moment the prices are very attractive on the MAX. So it's a very attractive aeroplane. I mean, I think we would be delighted to fly the MAX. We don't have an issue with the MAX has been recertified, and we think it's going to be a great aeroplane. Right at the moment, our main concern, though, is like I just mentioned, is the fixed cost.
Right.
We would rather at this stage stick to a little bit older aeroplane, but keep the fixed monthly lease payments lower. Maybe, yes, we've got higher variable costs, and that's a problem in the long run. But I think right at the moment, the name of the game is trying to keep your fixed costs as low as possible.
Elmar, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.